Most people focus on the moment a project begins. The kickoff meeting, the handshake, the contract, the exciting message that says, "Let's start." But the real story of a project doesn't begin in that moment. It begins the day after the scope is defined. Because defining scope feels like progress. Everyone leaves the meeting feeling confident, the goals look clear, the timeline feels achievable, the budget seems reasonable, the document is written, the agreement is signed, and for a moment, everything feels perfectly aligned. But projects rarely fail because someone didn't define the scope. They struggle because of what happens after the scope is defined. Because the day after, reality begins to interact with the plan. And that's where the real story begins. Today we're exploring what actually happens the day after scope definition. When assumptions meet execution, when expectations start shifting, and when the invisible forces that shape every project quietly begin to emerge. Let's start with the moment everyone remembers. The scope definition meeting. Maybe it was a strategy call. Maybe it was a planning workshop. Maybe it was a carefully written proposal. But in that moment, everything feels clear. The project goals are outlined, the deliverables are listed, milestones are scheduled, roles are assigned, and everyone feels a sense of momentum. The client feels confident they've explained what they need. The service provider feels confident they understand what must be delivered, and both sides walk away thinking, we're aligned. Why did it feel so right? Because scope definition gives people a sense of control. It transforms an uncertain idea into something structured, something documented, something measurable. And once a scope exists, people assume the hardest part is done. But in that moment, several assumptions quietly take hold, that the requirements will stay stable, that expectations are fully understood, that nothing important has been left unsaid, that everyone interprets the same words the same way, and most importantly, that the scope document represents reality. At the time, this decision made perfect sense, but documents describe intentions. They don't control what happens next. The day after scope definition, everything still looks good. Emails are sent confirming the agreement. The project officially begins. Initial tasks are assigned. Maybe the first deliverables are even completed quickly. In many cases, the early phase feels reassuring. A prototype appears. A design draft is shared. A report is delivered. The progress feels real. And this early progress reinforces a powerful belief. The project is going exactly as planned. But this is also when the quiet complexity of real work begins, because the scope document represents a simplified version of reality. And as soon as real work starts, new questions appear. Clarifications are needed. Edge cases emerge. Unexpected dependencies appear. But these small questions don't seem like problems. They feel normal, routine, part of the process. So no one worries yet, and that's completely natural, because early project momentum often hides deeper structural issues that take time to surface. This is where the invisible shifts begin. Not dramatic changes, not major failures, just small adjustments. A clarification here, a slight change there, a quick request that seems harmless. Can we also include this feature? Can we adjust this section slightly? Can we move this deadline forward? Each request feels reasonable. Each adjustment feels small. Each compromise feels temporary. But these tiny shifts begin to change the shape of the project. Suddenly, the original scope is no longer the exact reality being delivered. Not because anyone is doing something wrong, but because real work reveals complexity that plans cannot predict. Communication patterns begin to shift, expectations start evolving, priorities adjust, and sometimes, what the client thought they needed begins to change as they see the project developing. This is where scope creep quietly begins. Not through conflict, but through collaboration. And that's what makes it difficult to detect. Because everyone still believes they are working toward the same goal. They just don't realize the goal is slowly moving. The consequences rarely arrive loudly. They arrive slowly. Weeks later, timelines start slipping, budgets begin stretching, team members feel pressure increasing, and suddenly it feels like problems appeared out of nowhere. But nothing actually broke overnight. The project didn't collapse suddenly. The shift happened gradually. One adjustment at a time, one clarification at a time, one compromise at a time. until the original scope no longer reflects the real workload. This is why project challenges often feel surprising. People remember the scope definition. They remember how clear it seemed, but they forget the hundreds of small decisions that happened afterward. Because those decisions didn't feel important in the moment. Yet together, they reshaped the entire project. Most people don't ignore problems. They simply don't see them yet. There are powerful psychological reasons for this. The first is optimism bias. People want projects to succeed, so they assume adjustments will work themselves out. The second is overconfidence. Teams believe they can absorb small changes without major consequences. The third is process blindness. When people are focused on delivering results, they stop noticing structural shifts in the workflow. And the fourth is emotional investment. Once a project begins, people want to believe the original plan was correct. Admitting that the scope is changing can feel like admitting the original plan was flawed. So instead, everyone keeps moving forward, hoping the adjustments remain manageable. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. People with experience approach scope definition differently. They don't judge the quality of a decision by the moment it's made. They judge it by how well the system handles what happens next. Experienced professionals expect change. They plan for it. They monitor signals carefully. They watch for shifts in communication. They track how often small changes occur. They pay attention to how frequently assumptions must be clarified. And they ask different questions. Not just, what are we delivering? But also, how will we manage change? How will we handle new requests? How will we revisit the scope if the project evolves? Because experienced professionals understand something critical. Projects rarely fail because of bad intentions. They fail because small changes accumulate without structure. This is why strong service platforms, structured collaboration tools, and transparent project workflows matter so much. They don't eliminate change, but they make change visible, and visibility prevents silent scope drift. The lesson here is not, don't define scope. And it's not, don't adjust plans. Projects need flexibility. Ideas evolve. Requirements improve. That's part of progress. The real lesson is this: plan for the day after. Instead of asking, did we define the scope? Ask what happens when the scope changes. The best teams expect evolution. They design processes that support it. They communicate frequently. They revisit assumptions. And they treat scope definition not as a fixed contract, but as a living framework that guides collaboration. Because the strongest projects are not the ones that never change. They're the ones that manage change intelligently. Most projects don't fail when the scope is defined. They fail in the days, weeks, and months that follow. Not because someone made a bad decision, but because no one prepared for what happens next. The day after scope definition is when the real project begins. If this video changed how you think about project planning, service collaboration, or scope management, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. This is the day after, and next week we'll explore what happens the day after project kickoff. Because sometimes, the most important moment in a project is the one nobody is paying attention to.